Ah, eccolo. Bene, bene.
Siamo collegati?
Right, are we connected now?
Bene.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming along. We had a morning full of meetings to prepare for the start of the Portuguese presidency, which, as you know, will start on the 1st of January. This morning, we had a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister, António Costa, who is connected from Lisbon. Greetings to him. And then we had a conversation with the Portuguese government and the presidents of the political groups. We had a wide-ranging exchange on the many files which are pending, paying particular attention to the indications given by Prime Minister Costa as to the priorities of the Portuguese presidency. As you know, this is a special moment. We're awaiting the results of discussions in the Council between the German Presidency and the Polish and Hungarian governments to see whether the mechanism agreed will actually go ahead and whether the budget can actually get started on the 1st of January. And we're waiting on the negotiations between Europe and the United Kingdom, of course, with regard to Brexit. So there are a lot of ongoing issues which we're very attentive to because, of course, there will be conclusions and consequences for the future. I would like to welcome Prime Minister António Costa, and I would like to give him the floor and give him the opportunity to tell us about the Portuguese view of this very sensitive time for the European Union. António, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado. Queria agradecer.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank President Sassoli and all the presidents of the different political groups. We've had a first working meeting this morning, even if only remotely. We all agree on the fact that the coming month will be decisive. We all have a lot of trust in the German presidency to be able to conclude in the upcoming council meeting the final approval of the MFF, the Recovery and Resilience Fund. This is something which is absolutely vital to give trust for and confidence for the economic recovery in Europe. It's also going to be a decisive month for concluding negotiations with the UK to have the least traumatic Brexit as possible. It would also be decisive to be able to start with the Conference on the Future of Europe, which will allow us to have deeper debates on the Europe of tomorrow that we want to build. So there's a lot of expectations about this coming month. Now, that's how we build our presidency from the 1st of January. There are three very clear priorities for the Portuguese presidency. Firstly, economic recovery. Now is time to act. Now is the time to see results, and we need to start applying national recovery plans. We have the framework to do so. We have the MFF. We need to apply those efforts that we need to see from Europe to protect jobs, to protect families' livelihoods and protect businesses. The second very clear priority is development of the social pillar, Europe's social pillar. It's absolutely essential to ensure that everyone has confidence and in the digital and green transition. This means we need to strengthen skills so everyone can be actively involved in these transitions. It means we need to invest in innovation so that all businesses, including SMEs, can strengthen their competitiveness in the global world. We also need to strengthen social protection so no one is left behind. No, the social pillar was already important, and now in the context of the pandemic it's even more important. It was very clear that the EU has to have a health policy. We have to have a common vision on health, and we have to have better coordination in health. That's how we've been able to get through this pandemic. It's how we could have a joint purchasing of the vaccine and to ensure collective immunity at a European scale. This was a good test, and it showed us how important it is to move forward in this area. So, as I've said, the social pillar was already important, and now it's more important than ever. Now, third priority, we need to strengthen our strategic autonomy. Europe needs to continue to be a continent which is open to the world. We need to be true to our history, to our tradition in Europe, and we want to reaffirm international relations between Europe and the African continent. We want to strengthen transatlantic relations, not just with the President-elect Biden, but also with Latin America, and we want to move forward some very difficult negotiations such as the Mercosur agreement. We also want to build new bonds with countries in the Indo-Pacific region, whether it's Australia or New Zealand. We want to do this with a very specific framework. We want to organise a summit with India and also an informal heads of states and government meeting in Porto on the during our presidency. Now, Porto can be a very important city in this fact. So, economic recovery. Secondly, strengthen the social pillar. Thirdly, more autonomous and open to the world. That's the kind of Europe we want to see, and that is what we want to see as the hallmarks for our presidency. And throughout this period we want to work very closely with the European Parliament, with the different groups, and above all with President Sassoli. And so as a member of Parliament myself, it's something I'm very pleased to say. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, señor Primero Ministro. Comenzamos.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now we will begin with questions from journalists from Lisbon and Brussels. First question from Lisbon, please.
Parlamento Europeu. Ontem em Bruxelas.
Yesterday, we heard that there is no plan B when it comes to the recovery fund and the MFF, the upcoming MFF. Given that there is no plan B, given that there is no agreement in the European Council, if there's no agreement with the UK by the end of this year, we could say that Europe will be in a very difficult position. Now, I have a question now for the President of the European Parliament. After all the work from the European Parliament negotiating on the MFF, would you reopen the negotiations if there was an impasse with Poland and Hungary? With the recovery fund now, could the recovery fund move forward without a full agreement in Council, but with 25 countries rather than 27?
Señor Primero Ministro.
Começo eu?
Shall I begin? Please go ahead. Well, I will say as follows. The fact that we say there is no plan B, we still have our plan A. The next European Council has to approve the necessary mechanisms so that by the 1st of January we can have an EU which has its budget for 2021. If not, we will be paralysing activity across the EU, cohesion policy, part of that. It means we will have the MFF defined, the budget defined for the next 7 years, and we'll also have the economic recovery plan approved. So to achieve this, we can't reopen the agreement of the Council in July, nor the agreement which was signed with the Parliament on different conditionalities. They've been signed, they've been agreed, they can't be reopened. So we can work on the basis of these agreements, but we cannot reopen these agreements. And today, with discussions of the different political groups in the European Parliament, it was very clear what the position of the European Parliament was. The agreement is signed, it's not to be reopened now. And this means that next week we need to achieve an agreement.
Presidente.
Primo Ministro Costa.
Well, I think Prime Minister Costa has told us exactly what the situation is. We agree. That's Parliament's thinking as well. You've seen over the last few months we've been very focused on finding an important agreement, a fair agreement to offer greater opportunities to the July agreement with more resources for citizens added, and defining the rule of law mechanism, providing a framework. This is very important. This is the agreement, and of course there's a dialogue between the German Presidency and the Polish and Hungarian governments, and I think this will give the Council an opportunity to approve this. If that's not the case, there isn't a plan B. Work would have to start again from square one, and I think European citizens do not deserve this. They're not expecting this, and obviously this would compromise and jeopardize the ability to recover of the EU and individual countries. And as the Portuguese Prime Minister said, there is just a plan A which needs to get going soon, not a plan B.
La giornalista Rita cita pubblico. Please press the speaker button. The floor is yours.
Bonjour, je ne sais pas.
Good morning. I have two questions for the Parliament President. You have said that Parliament has negotiated, everything's closed. So I'd like to ask, what can you do over the month? Are you just waiting for the agreement in the Council? And are you prepared to have an extraordinary plenary during December, as you said, to definitively approve the budget agreement and the agreement with the United Kingdom?
Portugais pour le Premier Ministre. Ce Premier Ministre nestas.
Prime Minister, in your discussions today, were there any surprises, any special requests, or from the different presidents of the parliamentary groups in the European Parliament for the Portuguese presidency that you'd like to reveal to us?
Well, in the European Parliament we work a lot, and we're waiting for the Council to give the go-ahead to the agreement on the MFF, own resources, recovery and the rule of law. But that doesn't mean our activity has stopped. We're involved in a lot of trilogues. There's one particularly important one, a very demanding one, on the recovery and resilience facility and the mechanisms for application of the recovery fund. And this negotiation started a couple of weeks ago, and it will continue most likely because the questions which come up are very sensitive ones, and they're very interesting ones as well. What will be the mechanisms for monitoring of national plans, for example. There are issues relating to the Stability Pact as well. So it's a very complex negotiation. And at the end of the day, this will give a clearer framework for all the mechanisms for the implementation of the recovery. With regard to Parliament's capacity to do its own work quickly, well, since the start of this legislature, we are the institution which has always fulfilled its commitments very swiftly, of course. If there were a need for an extraordinary plenary, it would not be difficult to organise. We could certainly schedule this, and we very much hope, of course, that the Brexit negotiations do come to a positive conclusion with an agreement. And if that's the case, if there is this opportunity, the Parliament is very much prepared to meet in plenary even during the Christmas holidays.
Primeiro Ministro.
Prime Minister Costa. Thank you, Rita. Thank you for your question. Well, I had a few meetings today, and there was no surprises that were put to us. There was a range of topics which were addressed, and these are topics which are covered under the programme of the Portuguese presidency. Obviously, points which come under our main priorities. There's also other points, and there's some very positive meetings. A question from the Lisbon Luso Agency. Pedro Moraes, please. Well, I'd like to ask if this crisis caused by Poland and Hungary could, in the short term, lead to the acceleration in changes about how decisions are taken in the EU. And you talked about different. You talked about greater levels of integration in the EU. And secondly, the EU-US summit with with President Biden. Would you expect to see that in the first semester next year? This question of strategic autonomy of the EU, is this not incompatible with a strong commercial and trade link with the US?
Prego, António.
Sì, Primeiro Ministro.
Autonomia estratégica.
Strategic autonomy is not incompatible with a Europe which is open to the world. Europe needs to strengthen its production capacity. We need to reshore value chains. We need to strengthen our autonomy. But we need to do so keeping ourselves open to the world, a world which is multilateral and which we are active in multilateral organisations. This is a world where different economic regions organised themselves and organised between themselves with treaties, so we can have the best social standards, best environmental standards, tax transparency standards. The US is the oldest ally of the EU, and it will always be so. I think the new administration in the US does create a new opportunity to relaunch this organisation. President-elect Biden said that his first gest will be to bring the US back into the Paris Agreement. This means that we once again will have a major partner in the global challenge that is fighting climate change. So that's not incompatible. Yes, we do need more autonomy, but we want to keep Europe open. Now, on the first question, we're going to have the conference on the future of Europe where it's going to be possible to discuss all issues, but right now is not the time to discuss certain issues. Right now, The time is to meet the expectations of European citizens. People want to see rapid responses to the pandemic, to the economic crisis, to the questions of employment, to the rapid responses to support for those who are seeing their livelihoods cut or fear losing their business. There's no time to lose. We shouldn't be reopening things that's already been decided or making new enemies. Now we need to produce outcomes, and that's absolutely vital in order to do so, that in the next European Council we can achieve what is required, and that is an agreement, which means that on the 1st of January the next MFF and the Recovery Fund can begin. More than this, it means that the EU will not be blocked in January. If we don't have a budget in 2021, then we can't do a great deal apart from paying support under the Pillar 1 of CAP and pay salaries in the EUUS. And if there'll be a huge cut in payments in 2021 if we don't have an agreement. Now, no one wants to live through that situation. Now, it only depends on us. We need to avoid this situation. So that's what I hope that we will all be able to do, and hopefully everyone will have that in mind when we meet up at the next council meeting in Brussels. We want to achieve an agreement. We want to keep Europe working so we can respond to the social crisis, pandemic crisis, the economic crisis, what European citizens need, and it's what European politicians should deliver.
Breve domanda da Susanna Fresches a Bruxelles. Susanna, please.
Obrigada. Uma questão.
Thank you very much. The Belgian Prime Minister has just said that vaccination will begin on the 5th of January. It says that other countries are also ready to start vaccination. Now, so the 5th of January, is this a date that all countries are working on, or will Portugal begin before that or after that? Prime Minister Costa. Well, as I said yesterday, tomorrow we will set out our national vaccination plan, and this is clearly linked into what has been announced by the European Commission. Now, there's also the European Medicines Agency published yesterday their timeline for approval of vaccines, and the joint purchasing of vaccines will ensure that vaccinations will be distributed on the same day in all member states in accordance with the size of the countries, and this will be at different stages throughout 2021. That's how things are going to work. Well, as I said, tomorrow we have our national vaccination plan to be published tomorrow. And now I'd like to take the opportunity to thank President Sassoli once again for this excellent meeting, also for the spirit collaboration which has existed between us, and something which will be strengthened over the coming 6 months. So thank you very much, David.
Grazie, Primo Ministro.
Thank you, Prime Minister, dear António. We're sure of one thing: the fourth Portuguese presidency will be a great success, because we're used to Portuguese presidencies tackling important challenges and enabling Europe to be more effective and efficient. The story of Portuguese presidencies is very important in the European story and European history, not just in terms of organisation and achieving better treaties, but in the approach to key issues, economic and social issues, for example. And the way the Portuguese have of looking at the world. So I think what Prime Minister Costa said is very important, indicating a vision for Europe for the next few years. I was delighted to see your focus on establishing partnerships, not just competition with global actors. And this is an angle we really need. So congratulations, António. I'm sure that during your presidency there will be an ongoing dialogue with us. And I'm sure you will deal very well with a very difficult situation. Thank you.